In my last video, I admitted to using Midjourney for things like thumbnails, etc., kind of ancillary things for my YouTube channel. Of course, that generated a lot of blowback. There were understandably people upset about it. And my reason for admitting it was really just to be honest. I was saying that I'm leaving Adobe. I don't like some of the AI features, but I wanted to be honest that I'm messing around with AI somewhat. Well, the kind of feedback that I got made me stop for a few minutes and think through, do I really want to keep using Midjourney or not? I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm not going to hide or bury the lead here. I decided to quit using Midjourney. Now, the reason that I quit may surprise you, and I'm going to share that just now, but I want to, before I do that, get into a little bit of background, and I'll give you my rationale for why I quit using Midjourney, and will not be using any generative AI going forward. I'll just give you a little bit of background. I think I mentioned maybe in my Adobe video, but I used to own an agency, and in that agency, we did a lot of package design work and all kinds of stuff. And I had full-time illustrators on staff. These were not 1099 freelancers, contractors that we would hire once in a while when we need a spot illustration. I had illustrators, plural, on my staff that got paid by clients to do illustration work. If you ever shop at Wegmans Foods, for those of you that know what Wegmans is, you'll find some of my firm's illustration work on some of their packaging. If you buy toys from Fisher-Price Toys, you're going to find most likely some of the work from my firm on some of that toy packaging. We did a fair amount of illustration work. We're a creative firm that did design, illustration, video, web development, branding, etc. And so I kind of came to Midjourney with trepidation. I didn't feel good about using it because, as you can imagine, I have spent, and someone accused me of flexing, like, oh, you're bragging now. But I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars through the years, maybe $500,000 or more on illustration salaries as a business owner. That's not a flex. I am, and I was sharing that to say, look, if anybody gets this outside of an illustrator who's offended that I'm not using an illustrator, it would be me. I've employed illustrators. I've fought for usage rights against clients that tried to take advantage. It wasn't Wegmans or Fisher-Price. I've advocated for us. I've pushed against the downward pressure on rates for illustration. So of anybody that understands the kind of pain and the frustration and the anger around generative AI, especially from the creative world, I get it. So I started using it with some misgivings. I didn't have a sense of ease or peace around this. But at the same time, I thought I need to give myself a little bit of room to mess around with this thing and to understand. Now, when I first came in contact with AI in general, ChatGPT back in 2022, I did a little bit of an assessment. I very quickly decided I am not going to mess with this because in my main work, meaning strategy work, problem-solving work, thinking work, all my consulting work, when I do writing, et cetera, I realized do not use this tool for your work. Do not use AI for anything that you do yourself because you need to keep your problem-solving, your creative thinking, your ability to see disparate things and connect them in unique ways, to synthesize, to have insights. You need to keep that honed and fresh. And the more you offload to AI, meaning you're using now AI for your research, you're using AI to write your summaries, you're using AI to kind of look for opportunities to synthesize, disparate ideas. The more you lean on AI for that, the weaker you will become. And I knew that from the beginning. So I made a covenant with myself that I'm not using AI for anything that touches kind of the core value proposition, the core set of skills and gifts and talents, the core experiences that I have in my world. So I thought, I'm not doing it. Fair enough. But I have been open to things like Midjourney because making YouTube thumbnails is not a core of anything I do. In fact, YouTube itself is more of a hobby. I would love for it to be a full-time gig. If that happens, great, channel blows up. And my gosh, Mike, surely you have the words of God and everybody just follows. I'm not over here thinking that's going to happen anytime soon. No, the channel has been growing lately and I'm very grateful for that. But to me, a thumbnail needs to be good enough to attract an audience and get the algorithm to promote. And I'm not an illustrator. I'm not a designer. I'm not a visual communicator necessarily. And I said, you know what? I'm going to kind of mess around with Midjourney, maybe use it. I've got 2, maybe 3, but I know I can think of 2 off the top of my head, thumbnails, YouTube thumbnails. I'll put them up on the screen that I used Midjourney to create the illustrations for. And of those 2, I'll put it up on the screen as well. I don't think I made much, if anything, maybe a couple bucks on each of those videos, maybe 12 bucks. I don't know. The number will be up on the screen. But the long and short of it is, YouTube is not a moneymaker for me. And making thumbnails to me is something that I would outsource to somebody else, meaning I would probably hire somebody if I were not to do it myself. Well, this channel making $2 or $3 here or there is not really in a position where I'm going to start, just paying people to do my editing and paying them to write my scripts for me and paying them to do these killer thumbnails. I do them myself. And I thought, let me use Midjourney to augment. Now, I'm not justifying. I want to be very clear for anybody watching this. I'm not justifying. And for those of you that are in the creative fields, photography, illustration, music, and so on, that are outraged and upset about things like Midjourney, generative AI, you're not necessarily going to like the reason that I choose to not use it anymore. I think you're going to maybe find that a problem. And that's okay. I'm going to share it in just a minute. But I want to give you some background. In my agency days, when I owned my creative agency, I was very familiar with the illustration business, how it worked. I went out and sold the work, et cetera, and I paid illustrators. I highly valued. These are wonderful people that worked for me for many years, lovely people. And I never wanted to do anything that undermines the great work that they did and disrespected what they brought to the table. So I went into Midjourney with some trepidation, with some misgivings, with a sense of unease. At the same time, I didn't want to be such an ideologue that I didn't spend time to understand the technology and see, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are ways that it can fit into my workflow. However, as I said at the open, I have decided not to use it. Let's talk a little bit about the reasons. You got a little bit of my background here. You would think that the reason I decided not to use Midjourney, and the one that everyone attacked me on in the comments, and I say everyone, meaning anyone that had a criticism, kind of took this tack, and it was essentially, you're using Midjourney to create illustrations, but Midjourney steals art. Midjourney has stolen art from illustrators. It's stolen art from photographers. It's stolen music from musicians, and it uses all that to come out and spit out some, generative art that a prompt jockey is asking for. And so when you use Midjourney, you're actually part of the theft. I didn't get paid. It's taking advantage of my private and intellectual property. It's ignoring usage rights and copyright, and I'm not getting a nickel even if they did pay me. And I never authorized this. So you're in there using something that's immoral and unethical and should be illegal because it steals from me. That is not the reason that I'm not using Midjourney. And it's a legitimate argument from the standpoint, if it were true that generative art is stealing from you, then yes, you've got a great case. But I did research into this, and it's not conclusive, but I did research into this. And the best that I can understand is that the generative AI machines, if you will, don't necessarily steal your art from the perspective of they're cataloging and collecting. They're scraping the net, and they're creating this database of all this art. And then when the prompt jockey says, hey, I want, an image of, say, Mickey Mouse, but standing in front of a Frank Lloyd Wright house in a photorealistic style, you're giving it all this stuff, 16 by 9, and then it just goes and does its thing. It is not necessarily taking digital bits from your art and digital bits from somebody else's art and digital bits from somebody's Frank Lloyd Wright photograph and melding and mashing them all together to create this kind of, masterpiece, this bizarre and often impressive output of this strange thing that you would never find in the real world. It's not necessarily lifting parts of your photo or your digital illustration or clips of your music and then just kind of morphing it a little bit. the understanding that I have, now that's not to say, again, it's not conclusive. And maybe we fight them in court and find out actually they are doing all that and they're just not being honest about it, But the argument is that the AI is learning. So it's going through all your stuff. And there's a tool, I forget the name of it, but you can go online. There's a tool online and you can look up, give them your website or maybe some tags with your name, et cetera. And it will come and let you know, have we used your art to learn from? And you can tell it, stop, remove my art. And you got to go through picture by picture, image by image. It's file by file. It's not easy, but there is a database out there that it's almost like the do not call registry. Remember those days when spammers were not supposed to call us and we could be on the do not call registry? How that worked, huh? Because I still get those spam calls. But the argument is that AI is learning. So it goes into your art and everyone else's, and it uses it to kind of learn. It's being taught using your creative work, your intellectual property. And you can get upset about that. And that's fair. I'm not criticizing any creative who's upset about these giant tech platform multi-million, multi-billion-dollar companies taking advantage of your creative work for their profit. I get that. That's a whole discussion to have. However, none of us in the creative world, from sculptors to painters to illustrators to musicians to writers, editors, filmmakers, any of us can say, how dare they use my art to learn from? That's wrong, because each and every single one of us at some point in our career, typically early on in our budding growth as a creative, learn from other artists. There's not an artist out there that is so unique, so new, so unlike anything else, and that all came out because they lived in some sort of bubble, never imitated, never studied, never decomposed, never tried to replicate someone else's work. The classical way of training artists, painters, way back in the day was they would sit and imitate somebody else's work. They would learn brushstrokes and composition and lighting. Everything they did wasn't just this brand new thing. They'd study under their master. They would learn to imitate their master. They would learn the techniques of their master. And often, and I'm not using this as justification, but often they would create works in the name of their master. Anybody that knows some art history. But just go to today. How many kids have learned a song because they copied and learned to play Led Zeppelin? They learned to play Boston. They learned to play Billy Joel, whoever and whomever. They learn the bass lines if they're a bassist. They learn the drum riffs if they're a drummer. They learn to copy. They're playing the music. They're doing their bit. This is how young budding creatives become good, by learning and imitating others, learning from and imitating others. You don't develop your unique style in a vacuum. You learn from other artists. And to be fair, you didn't have permission to use their work. You just decided you really liked that song and you decided, I'm going to try to learn it and I'm going to play it. I might play it with buddies in a garage. Now, whether this is legal or not is immaterial, because legality doesn't equal moral or ethical, sadly. Our laws should reflect what is good, moral, ethical, right. We're in a postmodern society right now. The law is whatever the power says it is. Right now, the AI companies, and I want to be clear, I'm on the side of the creator in all this, but I just want to say to you, this is not a good enough reason. Right now, the AI companies are questioning copyright laws. They're questioning intellectual property laws. They're saying these things are antiquated. They don't work in the modern world. Well, they're trying to get the courts to change the law so that your work is no longer your work. So all of you that are standing on this kind of high horse saying, or sitting on a high horse, I should say, saying this is an outrage because they took my work. They didn't necessarily take your work and reuse it. They took it to learn from. That's what the argument is right now. Now, we could find out different later, but they took it to learn from it. And you and I and everybody else has learned from others' work. That's just how it happens. That's just how it happens. And even if that's not the case, at the end of the day, the courts are probably going to do what the big tech companies with all the billions of dollars and influential people and governments and so on in behind them saying change the laws, which means once the laws change, then what horse are you sitting on? Because you can't even hide behind they stole it from me. It's not technically theft if the state says it's okay. There has to be a deeper thing that informs why we do what we do. Now, I said I'm on the side of the creator. Here's partially why I'm on the side of the creator. First of all, I'm just sympathetic. And as I said, I worked in this industry before, so I get it, and I'm on your side. And I know that you get the short end of the stick. I know that illustrators, I keep using illustration because that's how I was using Midjourney, but musicians, artists, painters, photographers, illustrators, you have a beautiful gift that you've invested your life into to make that gift as good as it possibly could be. And you struggle to make ends meet. You struggle to be respected. You're surrounded by people that just want to monetize you and take advantage of you and don't even look at you as someone that has something to offer. So I understand it. I totally get it. But there has to be something deeper that animates why we should be against AI, generative art in particular. And here's my reason. I believe that human beings are transcendent. I don't believe we're just animals. I don't believe we're just material beings. We're just higher evolved. Infer from that what you want, but I believe that human beings have transcendence. Now, I believe in God. I'm a Christian, so I believe in God. But I believe every human being bears God's image, that we're all his image bearers. And because of that, there's something sacred about a human being. There's something sacred. We have a soul. That human beings on earth are the nexus between the physical world and the transcendent, the spiritual world. Now, you can make this as mystical as you want. I'm just sharing this to give you some context that I think humans are special. You don't have to have the same religious beliefs, but if you say, yes, I believe that humans are special. If you don't, if you have a mechanistic, naturalistic view of the world, we're just a higher evolved animal, and AI is just a new type of animal, if you will, a man-made artificial being who can also have consciousness and intelligence, and we need to make room for the future. I don't agree with that. I think that human beings are special, that we're sacred, that we bear God's image, that we have transcendence, and that we have a soul. And thus, there is a quality to our work that is also transcendent. It might be obvious sometimes. I mean, silly thing, my wife and I, last night, we went to Joseph C. or Joseph P. Riley Park, where the River Dogs play, our local baseball team. And the Charleston Symphony performed on the field in open air for about an hour and a half, a bunch of patriotic songs, some pop tunes, some beautiful classical music. And it was just sublime. The whole thing was sublime. There was something about it that just gave me goosebumps. The beautiful night air, seeing the palm trees and pelicans flying overhead, and we're just over the side of some of the brush. There's the marsh, the river, and the bay. These live performers are giving it their best, and just being in a crowd of people. There's something, this kind of moment of human beauty came together in just a sublime, transcendent way. It was a moment of beauty. Human beings are capable of creating beauty, and whether it's explicit, like last night where I was just enraptured, at times goosebumps, maybe a little bit watery eyes, and a few good laughs with my wife and some of our friends together, just in the nice moments. Or it could be so subtle we don't notice it. There might be something about it. There's just a quality that we can't put our finger on. But human creativity, human work has soul. And the converse is true, that the machine work, the AI output, the creative of the AI, even if it's stunning, if it's impressive, it's evocative, it's mind-blowing. There's some amazing images that AI is capable of creating, amazing music that it's capable of creating. But the thing about all that is it lacks a soul. And you can see it. There's a coldness, a hardness, a detachedness to it. Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's subtle, but AI work lacks soul. Whereas our work, our creative output, brings more humanity to the fore, which I think is a good thing. AI work is more dehumanizing in that it removes humanity from the equation. And here's the nut for me. In a world of proliferating AI, we are going to see more and more AI content. More AI music, more AI video, more AI photography, more AI illustrations, more AI articles, more AI news stories, and on and on and on. You and I, who are the consumers of this content, are going to be inundated with AI content. As a human being, I do not want to live in that world, because that world is a world that becomes more and more and more soulless, more and more dehumanized. I don't want to be overwhelmed with AI copy, whether I even know it's AI copy or not. I don't want to be surrounded by AI images. I don't want to be awash with AI sounds, music, and sound effects and so on. I don't want it, because I'm a human being and I want to live in a world that is human. And even if AI gets better and better and the algorithm can figure out ways to make it feel more human, at the end of the day, it's not human. It's like saying, I want to marry someone who's a human being. I don't care how close science can get to making a pseudo-human. It's like so close you can't really tell. I don't want to marry that person. I don't want to be in love with that person, quote unquote. I don't want to try to have a family with that person. I want, as a human being, to engage with other human beings. I want to see their creative output. I want to see the problems that they solve. I want to see the beauty that they create. And I'm more than happy to deal with a lot of the problems too. I don't like the problems that we create for ourselves. But this idea of a world just saturated, filled to the brims with AI content that ends up pushing out human content, space for human content, space for human creativity, space for human work. I don't think that's a good world for human beings. And so, even though my decision is like a drop in the ocean, it's like one little drop in an ocean of an issue, I've decided I'm not going to use Midjourney anymore. I don't want to have a hand in helping to create that soulless, dehumanized world. It's as simple as that. I know it took me a long time to get there, but I want to share with you my rationale. What are your thoughts? Those of you that are watching this that criticize me, fair enough. And I think in the comments, unless you were a total tool, I said, look, it's a fair criticism. I try to make a case for myself, but at the same time, I said it's fair. So I'm grateful for the criticism. I don't like it. It's not fun to be criticized, but at the same time, I already had a bad feeling about this, and I was just kind of messing around with it to figure out what I really thought. And so I knew at some point I was going to have to deal with it. I dealt with it a lot sooner than I thought I was going to have to. And I'm grateful for that. So going forward, no more Midjourney, no more generative AI for me. And I'm looking for ways that I can champion human creativity, human work, human art, because that's the kind of world that I want to live in. And I think that's the world that's best for all of us. So again, thanks so much to everyone, all the comments, support, critiques, questions. I love it. Do me a favor, leave some thoughts down below in the comments. I'd love to engage with you there. And in the meantime, just keep this one thing in mind. I love you all. I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.